Welcome to Tong for our Instagram Live. I am going to be wearing sunglasses while we're outside because it's the only way that I can see the screen. So I'm going to wait for a bit till people join up. Hopefully we can all listen to the songbirds that are out in full force while we're waiting to get everyone together. But welcome so far to our Instagram Live workshop tour, live from Tong Mill in Kent. It's lovely and loud here. Hi, Annalena, welcome. Loving the waves, loving the clapping. It's a beautiful sunny day here, so hopefully we'll get to spend a little bit of time outside. I know I don't have the greatest connection outside. Welcome, welcome. Welcome everyone. Welcome everybody. We're at Tong Mill in Kent, sort of North Kent, very near to where the Thames meets the sea. It's a very interesting place to be locked down, lovely and sunny and warm. We're going to start a workshop tour in a couple of minutes. I've been advised to let this start up over a little bit of time, make sure everyone has a chance. Just a bit of a pause in the video there. Sorry about that. We don't have the greatest Wi-Fi connection, but we're going to do our absolute best. Welcome, welcome everyone. Just give you a little view of our mascot. There's Monty. Whenever one of us goes outside, he likes to come outside too. Normally he's running around like a crazy person, but he seems like a very attentive audience member at the moment. Hey bud? Hey Monty? Hey, welcome to Instagram. He's looking right at you. That's fantastic. So the aim of today is really to just show you around the workshop, show you some of the materials that we work with, and also we will have lots of time for questions. If you want to type questions in online, I will do my absolute best to just respond to those questions as they come in. Welcome everyone. So you can still see the odd bit of traffic going by. Not so many. I hope you can also hear the occasional sheep in the background, because we do have a field of sheep across the way, which I would love to show you more of, but I think if I get involved in that, we're going to lose connection. But I can definitely hear them from where I am. Welcome everyone. Welcome Emmy, Carla, Tom. Welcome. Right. I think it might be a good time to get started. Here we are at Tong Mill. This is the workshop of Elvis and Kresse. It's also our home. So for us, the lockdown hasn't really affected us very much because our commute was always about 21 steps. It certainly has affected the team and how we're able to operate. So there are some things that are slightly different than they would normally be, but we're absolutely, it's our absolute pleasure to welcome you to the workshop. So right now we typically start all of our tours outside because we do three things at Elvis and Kresse. We rescue materials, we transform them into beautiful things, and then we donate 50% of our profits to charity. And the materials that we rescue are often absolutely filthy, so when they come to us, we keep them outside to begin with. So I think if I show you with the camera, you can see in the distance there some fire hoses. I would walk closer, but I think that we will lose connection. So we collect all of the waste fire hoses from the London Fire Brigade. They come to us dirty and used. Often they've had a long life, 25 years before they come here. We store them outside until we clean them. I'll show you how we clean them a little bit later. The main reason that fire hoses can't be recycled is because it's a double nitrile rubber jacket surrounding a nylon woven core, and because the nylon is completely wedded to the nitrile rubber. You can't shred fire hoses, melt them down, and start again. There we go, a little bit more of a feature of Monty. But here, let's start to make our way inside. So there we have the lovely Elvis and Kresse sign. You also see these are the ends of fire hoses. Actually, this is a great way to show you the nylon core of a fire hose. It's because we've cut the couplings off. So you can see this bit of frayed edge. That's the nylon center of the hose. And in general, actually, you've got some really great variety of color here, but 95% of British hoses are red. A very small amount are yellow, around 5%, and blue hoses are incredibly rare. So seeing blue hoses here like this, that absolutely never happens. But we thought we'd leave some out for you to see. And the reason we keep the couplings is because we polish them up and turn them into candle holders. We obviously have to cut them off first, otherwise there'd be no way to clean both the outside and the often filthy inside of the hose. The hose is dirty on the outside because it gets dragged into fires and through the roads. The hose is dirty on the inside because often there's lots of standing water there. So now we're going to go inside. I'll be able to take my sunglasses off, but welcome. We'll adjust to the new light. So this is where basically you could call this the entry to the workshop. And in a lot of workshops, this area here would just be an entryway. But for us, it's very much a place of an enormous amount of activity. We have a couple of machines here. This is a splitter. A lot of leather goods brands would use this kind of a machine to thin leather down. What we use it for is to feed fire hose through it, peel it into two halves, and then extend the use of basically make it workable, make it a workable textile, but also ensure that we get to use absolutely every bit of it. So we don't put it in here, split off the bottom and throw away the bottom. If a fire hose is 22 meters long, we first cut it in half, 44 meters, and then when we put it through the splitter, we get 88 meters of usable textile. And that's because basically the material runs in here, like that. It's obviously off, so safe for me to touch. There's a huge giant blade that runs around the machine like that, and it can peel the material in half. Then we have another machine that's very, very critical for any kind of bag making exercise. This is called a clicking press. We called it a ka-chunker when it first came because that's the sound that it makes. But what you do is you decide the piece that you're going to make. You decide what your pattern piece looks like. Then you go and you make a knife. So this is a knife for one of our leather shapes. You make a knife like this. And then you put your leather down on the surface. You put your knife down on top. And then this giant thing opens up hydraulically. You press the two buttons down and it ka-chunks. It clicks that shape out. And I can show you what one of those shapes looks like. Absolute precision cutting, so you can see all of the little slots and all of the little shapes that come out. But we can do that with basically any shape. So any shape that you would want to put into a pattern of a bag, we would use on there. Now let me go through. We obviously have a stockpile of cardboard boxes. Cardboard boxes come into us. We keep them, we reuse them. So that's why we have always a pile of them here. And then here is actually some of our stock in here. Normally this would be put away, but we kind of have a bit of a surplus of stock at the moment, just because we were, I guess, really prepared for a big season, which is, going to be completely different now. We have no idea what it's going to be like. Now we come through, scale, very crucial piece of machine. We weigh everything before it goes out, so that's absolutely a necessity. Now we have here some of our yellow hose that's clean and ready to be made into either belts or bags. Over here we have some red hose, which is also clean, ready to be made into belts or bags. When I was telling you about what we do on the splitting machine, I think it's quite helpful to see this. So this is a piece of full thickness hose. This has not been through the splitter. This piece of hose has been through the splitter. So we've been able to thin it and take it exactly in half. And that's why you can see on the inside some of the nylon woven core. But this is now very pliable. It's very easy to use as a textile. Whereas this we can use for belts, but we need this kind of material for use in bags. We keep all of our offcuts and our scrap for various projects. That's what's there. And then we have, let's say, the body of the workshop. And a little cameo by Danny. You want to give us a wave, Danny? Danny is our chief craftsman, and he's actually at the moment making shopping bags out of waste parachute silk, and each one of these shopping bags becomes a dust cover to go over top of any of the bags that would be purchased from us. There we have all of the machines that we need in order to make our bags. So we have flatbed machines, we have an overlocking machine, we have a, what do we call this machine, Danny, with the arm? This is a cylinder arm machine, and this is the kind of machine you need to make bags, because otherwise you would never be able to close up a bag. You can see from our machines that a lot of them are not new. They're vintage machines. You often need about 4 people to carry each one. They're very heavy industrial machines. You definitely need machines like this if you want to work with the hose. This is Elvis's workbench. We all do use it, but it is primarily his. Now we'll go into the main workshop here, and we will meet Megan, although she's hiding a bit. This is Megan. So normally we have 10 people in the workshop, but at the moment we've got just Elvis, myself, Danny, and Megan, and that's because in order to create social distancing, we just don't have the space to fit the whole team. Lots of people are working from home, but we essentially have to have a reduced skeleton team in order for us to keep going. So there's a couple of interesting things in here, but I'm going to start with my favorite, which is the materials, which we've laid out to show you. So these are some of the materials we work with. Let's start with fire hose. So this is a full hose. As we get it, the first thing that we do is take these off. Then we separate it in half. We trim that edge off, the top edge off and the bottom edge off, so that we've got 2 flat planks. We used to call those fettuccinis, and then we had a lovely Italian designer come to meet us, and she said they're too wide for fettuccini, so we have to call it pappardelle. We still call it fettuccine though. That's when we clean the hose, and that's when we get it ready to go. So here we have our full hose, then we have our fettuccinis, and then we go down to the thinned hose that's ready to use in a bag. But when we're at this stage, this is when it's ideal for cleaning. And where we clean the hose, well, we used to clean it outside, okay? But that was until we found this amazing machine. We worked with Electrolux to actually design something called, hold on, wait for it. Let's see if I can zoom in close enough. The Elvis and Kresse fire hose washing cycle. So there, as you can imagine, there was no machine that existed in the world that could clean fire hose. So that's why we had to work with Electrolux to effectively invent a cycle. And that's where we clean the hoses. And once the hoses are clean and they're thinned, we can turn them into bags like that. So that gives you the evolution from the waste material to preparing it and turning it into a textile and making it into a bag like that. Now we can do the same with a couple of other materials. This is another waste that we collect. It's waste printing blanket. These are huge, large rubber mats that get the ink rolled onto them before a drum picks up that ink and prints it onto paper. So this kind of printing blanket is used in the offset printing industry. And what happens is they get little scratches and nicks in them over time, which would mean that the print wouldn't be perfect. And then they get disposed of. And because these printing blankets are, again, a composite like the hose, so you've got canvas on the outside, and I don't know if you can see that clearly. Yeah, you've got canvas that's wedded entirely to rubber. You can't shred this and melt this and make new material. So that's why this material would otherwise go to landfill. So we bring it here, we take the top skin off of it, we turn that skin into packaging. So we have this lovely flat piece like this, which we created some slits in and some tabs, and we use that to pack things like wallets and card holders. But we also love the fact that when we split this down, you get this beautiful matte black texture, and that's what we use to make a bag like this. So we go from a waste like this that's going to landfill all the way to our own packaging and a bag like that. Now let's talk about parachute silk. This is another material that we really love. We've been collecting this from the beginning, since around 2005. So we get parachute silk offcuts like this. So this is the end of a roll, you can see. But we also get parachute silk in panels that have effectively failed. So they've cut the panels to make a new parachute, they test it, and it's failed. So they don't want to put it into a parachute, which means it comes to us. And as you saw earlier, Danny is currently using some of the white parachute material to make tote bags like this. So when you buy a bag like that, it will come in this instead of a traditional dust cover, and it means that you can use this forever and ever and ever as a reusable shopping bag. We have a lovely little bit of fire hose on there to keep it Elvis and Kresse. But we also use parachute silk in the linings of some of our products. So here's a wallet, and there you can see some hot orange parachute silk inside. Now, what's another material? Here we go. Feast your eyes on our leather. So I've shown you a bit of the leather over by the clicking press, but we get the leather offcuts from the production of Burberry leather goods. So sometimes the offcuts are small like this, sometimes they're bigger. Often they have these chalk marks on them, and that's where the original cutter has made a mark to say, please don't use this particular bit of leather. But even this tiny little scrap, we're able to salvage because we're effectively turning pieces like this into our more uniform shapes. So we've created shapes like this and this and this and this because they can be woven together and built into whole new hides to make rugs and to make the panel for wallets and to indeed make bags like that. So it means that instead of that leather being wasted, every single tiny little piece of it can be saved and can be turned into a product. And now we have another material that's one of my favorites, tea sacks. Okay, so tea gets imported into this country in giant paper sacks. Each one would come up to, I don't know, about a meter high. And the problem with the tea sack is that it has layers. So you can see in here, the outside of the tea sack would look like this. It would say, Rainforest Alliance certified. It will also say the country that it came from. But the final layer, so there's 4 layers of paper, and the final layer is laminated to foil and polyethylene. And because of that lamination, none of the tea sack material can be saved. All of this goes to landfill, even though the paper is beautiful food-grade craft paper. So we bring this tea sack here to us. We take it apart. We take all of the paper layers apart. So we come up with rolls of paper like this. We iron it flat, and then we cut it into our packaging. So we make these mailing envelopes like this. And we also make all of our own leaflets. So if you order an Elvis and Kresse product, it will come in something like this. And we even say on this leaflet is printed in 100% rescued tea sack paper. Because everything that we do, we want to do it in an Elvis and Kresse way. And that means it has to be rescued, transformed, and 50% of the profits go to charity. I suppose I can tell you a little bit more about the charity partners in a minute, but right now I'll just do a bit more of the workshop. This is Megan. And actually, you can see Megan is working on something for one of our fellow B Corps, Cook. Cook is based just down the road from us in Sittingbourne. They make absolutely fantastic food for your freezer. And you can imagine right now they're busily preparing lots and lots of food for everyone. And they're amazing B Corporation like ourselves, which means that they operate entirely ethically and in as sustainable manner as possible. And they asked us when we first moved here if we could help them do some signs for them, and we do indeed make signs for them out of waste scaffolding boards. So you can see some of the wood there that's ready to go. So instead of their signs being made from normal new wood, it's made from rescued scaffolding wood. And Megan is by hand with a tiny, tiny little brush making sure that the Cook logo looks fantastic. Here's another, this is an order that's waiting to go out to one of our retail partners, but as you can imagine, retail partners are all closed at the moment. So this is going to have to wait for quite a long time. There's more of the parachute silk dust covers in action. Then this is quite a fun machine here. This is a laser etching machine. Anything that you can put into that computer that can be a digital file, we can laser etch in here. And we use the laser primarily because when we first started, are any of these lasered, Megan? Where is a zip pull? I'll find a zip pull for you. We use the laser because leather brands would use a debossing tool to put their logo into leather. And we are able to do that too when we use leather. Okay, so there's Elvis and Kresse debossed into leather. But fire hose is fire hose is heat resistant. So that never worked for fire hose, which meant we had to come up with another plan. So really early on, we used lasers. And you can see that Elvis and Kresse here is laser etched into that bit of fire hose. And on the back side of that, it will say, sorry, I'm terrible at technology, made from rescued materials. So every single piece of ours will have some bit of fire hose on it, and we'll tell you that. But essentially, the laser allows us to do that kind of etching and that kind of branding, but it also allows us to cut things out. So if we're deciding on a new leather shape, or if we're trying to redesign it something different, you can basically program the shape into the computer, and then it will cut out here. And you can see how elaborate some of the cuts can be. And that just basically allows us to work on the design before we go to the stage of making a knife. Because making a knife, you only want to do when it's absolutely ready to go. You don't want to make the knife until you've got the pattern absolutely perfect. We're getting some good comments here. Yes, your name, if you've ever had your name laser etched onto anything, or if you've ever ordered a product with personalized, it's been laser etched on and programmed into the computer by us. We also, you can see we use our own materials here. So we've used offcuts of fire hose to upholster this chair. We've used a bit of our leather scrap to create a lot of desk blotter for our laptop. And we've used some fire hose to create a stool. So essentially, this building that we've come to, which I'm going to show you now, the building. When we came here, this building was just a shell, and we built the workshop in here. Here's some fire hose that's just been cleaned, that's drying. But now I'm going to show you outside, which is hopefully going to hold. And this is why we're here. This is the beautiful place where we are. This is Tong Mill Pond. Sorry, I got too far from the building and I lost connection, but I'm back. But this is the pond, and then I'll try and stay tight. This is the building. I can't get any further away or I'll lose you. It's a beautiful old building. But when we came here, it was just a shell inside, so we had to build the workshop basically from scratch, which is why it involves lots of different kinds of materials. We've obviously used some parachute silk there, an old rug on the floor just to stay a bit warmer in the winter. I want to show you over here what some of the candle holders look like when we've actually finished the transformation. So that's the end of a fire hose. But once you've polished it up and added candles, I think we can agree they look absolutely beautiful. Good question. Do we swim in the pond? No. We have tried swimming in the pond, but it's about 2 feet deep. There's Elvis and Monty.
Hi. Welcome to Elvis and Kresse Workshop. Hope you enjoy the tour.
But we don't swim in the pond because we tried it once and Elvis came out completely muddy because it's only 2 feet deep and it's very, 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 very dirty. And filled with fish and just not designed for swimming in any way, shape or form. But I'm now going to sort of head upstairs. I'm going to show you my office, which is very messy, so be prepared for that. This is some of the stock we've got. There's some bags of failed parachute panels ready to go. Now we're going to go upstairs and you can see Monty following me absolutely everywhere. That's what he likes to do. And here is our office. Again, this office is normally filled with people, but today it's just me up here. So yeah, there's a bit more of the view. I guess you can see that lockdown is great for us because we're in a beautiful space. Oh, thank you for the comment. I'm glad you bought someone a gift of ours. We have a little kitchenette in here where people can sort of prepare their lunch, a little fridge, that's a loo. Lots of things associated with keeping coffee hot. Someone gave us some flowers once and I watched them sadly die and then turned them into a dried out bouquet. Oh, this is quite interesting. So the tea sacks I showed you before, they all come to us from Clipper Tea. Clipper is also a B Corp and they very kindly pack up their old tea sacks once they've taken the tea out of them, and they ship them up to us. Here's a fantastic photo of Elvis visiting 10 Downing Street with one of our compact briefcases, pretending it's the budget box or one of the one of the famous red boxes. I think it looks quite good. This is my desk, so this is where I sit, which is probably quite obvious because it's got the absolute maximum amount of mess. And you can also see that the reason why I sit here is because I can see out that window and that window and that window, and I just love a good view. Oh, I'm glad that you drink Clipper tea. This is another room where we store some products. These are all of the fire and hide belts. So these are belts where we have combined, let me just turn the light on in here, where we've combined fire hose and our leather system. So we don't obviously collect large bits of leather, but each one of these is a different piece that's been woven together and then stitched at the edge. And each one of these belts has fire hose on the inside and the leather system on the outside. And they're all laid out here to reflect the different sizes and the different lengths that we can make them to. So those are these. This is another room of storage. And then what I wish I could take you into was that room. So that's a tiny little room that one person can fit in, but there's a staircase that goes up. And in the eaves of this building, we have a small photo studio where we take all of our own product shots. And actually, you can see here, Elvis once misstepped and he came through the ceiling, and I came into this room and his leg was hanging down there. He wasn't hurt, but it was definitely very interesting. That is where Elvis sits. His desk is pretty messy too, I have to say. And then we have generally a selection of the products that we make, and they're all, here for us to, do an interview in front of, to look at, to remind ourselves what we're producing maybe next, or the kinds of things that we can improve on. But definitely here are some of our absolute classic pieces. And actually, what's quite fun about this section here, let me turn the light on, is that in our leather system, we have had quite the evolution. So we started working on leather in this diamond pattern, but there were some certain inefficiencies to that. So then we shifted to the octagon pattern, which we still use for rugs because it's the strongest connection. Then we worked on something that we call the wave, which we've used in a couple of different bags. And now, as you can see, most of our pieces like that have the square system. And the reason we use the squares is because there's the least amount of wastage. You get to maximize the use of the leather. So there's probably about, in every ton of leather waste that we collect from Burberry, in the beginning we were able to rescue about 72% of that and turn it into our system. Now we're closer to 80% by switching from the octagon system to the square system. So that's why we've had that change there. We also have a lot of workshops here, and this is quite a fun bag to show you. So when we do a workshop, people come, we lay out all the colors of leather that we've got, and they then get to decide which leather colors they want to use, but also what pattern they want to use. So in this case, the person liked kind of a mulberry, dark maroon, this light pink color, and a navy blue. So they chose these colors, but they also chose the way that the pieces fit together and the way they create that pattern. And then they got to choose the yellow trim and the lining. So that's what happens at one of the workshops. You would get to choose the colors, you get to cut those pieces out on the clicking press, and you get to weave it together. So you really do end up by having a very, very bespoke piece. Now, does anybody have any particular questions, or is there anything in particular that you would like to see? I'm just going to sit down for a minute. Anything anybody would particularly like to see? Or any particular questions? We'll see if any come through. in the meantime, I suppose I can tell you a little bit more about the philosophy of Elvis and Kresse. You know, the reason we started the business wasn't because we wanted to have a luxury company. It was because we wanted to rescue London's fire hoses. We wanted to make sure that this beautiful, durable material didn't go to landfill. The reason we decided to turn that into luxury goods was because we know that nitrile rubber is used by many other luxury businesses. So we knew that it would be a suitable material to use. We initially thought of turning the fire hose into roof tiles, but actually you can see some lovely fire hose tiles behind me. But the reason we didn't do that is because if you had it on a roof outside, after about 10 years, it would crack under UV light. And also, fire hose, once there's no water running through it, is flammable, so it wouldn't be up to roof standard. We would have made leaky, flammable roofs. But it's very, very suitable for use as bags. And the reason to do luxury bags is because it's a very rare material. And instead of making things that are used once and then thrown away, we want to make things that can be used for all time. And that can be repaired over time and that people really cherish. That's why we don't do seasons or seasonal collections, or we don't really follow the trends either. The parachutes, that's a good question. The parachutes come from Wales, one of the biggest suppliers to the Ministry of Defence. And the reason why we collect them from them is because they're an absolutely huge supplier and absolutely wonderful, and Elvis loves driving to Wales 4 times a year to collect the parachutes. Another great question about our charity partners. In the case of the fire hose range, 50% of the profits go to the firefighters charity. They specifically look after the mental health of the firefighters and also their physical well-being. So they help with things like physiotherapy or specific treatments if they've been injured, but they also help them to deal with the mental stresses of being in the fire service. The reason we started with fire hoses is because I saw a fire hose in a landfill and then went to meet the London Fire Brigade and absolutely fell in love with the material. And just completely loved the material and thought that it deserved a second life, and knew really that it needed, I suppose, to be made wonderful for other people to enjoy. It wasn't enough for us to just use it for ourselves and make a few bits and pieces for us. We wanted to turn the fire hose into something that everyone could love and cherish. I love the question here about circular economy and whether we think that luxury focuses on unique and valuable and rare, and that the circularity is more about the efficient reuse of materials. I absolutely think there's an overlap. I actually think that it really behooves luxury to focus on true creativity. And if you're being truly creative, you can't use a pace or processes or materials that are degrading the environment or exploiting its people. You have to use your creativity to really deploy materials effectively. And if you do it in a circular way, you're definitely on top there. The material, the way that we've done the leather system is specifically so that the leather has a life and then another life and then another life. Our leather can be made into a rug and then made into upholstery and then made into something else. So I think it's something that everyone has to focus on. And if you think about the waste hierarchy, reduce is at the top, so buying less. Reuse is number 2, and recycling is actually at the bottom. Recycling is a defeat. What did you both do before Elvis and Kresse? Oh, that's a great question. I started I did politics at university. I studied basically Chinese politics. My first job was in venture capital, so I worked in investment for a couple of years, mostly on hard technology startups, so not software, but actual physical technologies. And then very early on, when I think I was about 22 or 23, I started a biodegradable packaging company. So I suppose I've been an entrepreneur for a long time now. I'm 43 now, so that's about 20 years. And the biodegradable packaging company was way ahead of its time because that was in the early 2000s. And I remember the first shipment of biodegradable packaging we brought to the UK biodegraded on the way here. So it was wonderful, but it didn't quite work yet. And Elvis worked for a design consultancy in London. He was out in Hong Kong, which is where we first met, working for that same business. But he wasn't working on the design side. He was working on, project management and coordinating global financial roadshows. So neither of us have a background in design. And I think the reason why we started doing this was purely out of a love for the fire hose. It had absolutely nothing to do with wanting to start a luxury business. We wanted to rescue the fire hose. And then when we learned that the luxury industry, certainly there was an amazing report issued by WWF that examined the luxury industry. And no big luxury player got more than a C+ in terms of its environmental performance and its ethical performance. And we knew we could do better. We knew that if we just focused on treating people well and respecting the environment, that we could come up with something really unique and save the hose in a great way. Got a great comment here that someone's first bag arrived yesterday. They love it and can't wait to take it out into the world. I think that's how we're all feeling about things right now. Certainly, we all wish we could spend more time with each other. And more time out in the world. So I guess for us the goal was always just to create a gold standard business in terms of the environment and how we treat people. Do we ship our items only in the UK or elsewhere? No, we definitely ship to all places in the world. We have a package right now on its way to Vietnam. We have literally shipped something to Timbuktu. I think that was one of my favorite days of running the business, because Timbuktu is always one of these places in my mind that just must be so magical and wonderful, and I've always wanted to go there. But we do ship internationally as well. On the ethical and environmental side, I think it's also quite important to say that we are a certified social enterprise and a certified B Corp. And something that's quite unique about the B Corp movement, so us and Cook, who we were talking about before, are both B Corps, is that you have to change the constitution of your business. So you have to change the legal documents that underpin your business to say that shareholders are not the most important. You have to say that the planet and its people are at least equally important to shareholders. And I know that sounds totally rational. I know that most people who are watching right now think, yeah, that sounds absolutely great. But the reality of that is that that's not how our current capitalistic system works. Right now, most companies have to maximize shareholder value because of something called fiduciary duty. It's something they absolutely are legally obliged to do. And the problem with that is that you've got companies who will do everything that they can to maximize profit, even though that's at the expense of the environment or at the expense of the people that work in a business. And we know that a lot of these issues happen particularly in fashion. And that's why fashion revolution started, because of what happened at Rana Plaza and because of what was happening all over the world in supply chains, where people were so disrespected and so degraded by the work that they were doing for often no pay or under modern slavery conditions. And we need to, I think, take responsibility for all of the items that come into our life, to the food that we eat and the clothing that we wear. We need to say, actually, I can't accept that this wonderful low price comes at the cost of the environment or the people somewhere else. I actually think that that's the biggest issue, is our desire for cheapness. Because if you're buying something that's cheap, often that cost is just being borne by someone else, somewhere else, or the environment. And we can't allow people who are vulnerable or the environment to subsidize our cheap food and cheap fast fashion habits. It was really interesting, actually, a couple of nights ago when they were talking about a lot of the vegetables that we get from Spain and how a lot of the workers there aren't being paid well either. So certainly food and fashion are two industries you really, really have to look under the label in to understand what's actually happening. And one of the great things about being a B Corp is that those businesses are already looking under their own hoods and doing everything that they can to ensure that they are engaged in absolutely none of those practices. Because, as I say, we all have to change the constitution of our business to legally oblige us to treat our supply chain and indeed the earth as if it mattered to us, in the case of Elvis and Kresse, more than shareholders. What's a comment here? Oh, someone has a backpack they haven't been able to take out yet. I really hope you're able to take it out soon. Certainly, we all definitely are feeling that. We're all definitely feeling like we need to go out into the world and be together. And I think I miss hugging people more than anything else, hugging my family and hugging my friends. Would you branch out into shoes? That's a great question. We have tried making shoes, and it's hard. Fire hose, we tried making shoes when we only had fire hose as a material, and the fire hose does not breathe. You would have a very sweaty foot if you had it in a fire hose shoe. That's all I can say. So maybe we would try shoes now that we've got the leather system, but I don't think that a full fire hose shoe is a great idea. And that's why actually we never made full fire hose backpacks, was because we found the fire hose against our backs to be too sweaty. Is it difficult to become a B Corp? Yeah, it is. You have to go through something called, you have to go online, you have to go through an online assessment. Any company in the world can go and use that assessment tool for free. You evaluate your company in terms of its governance, how you treat your supply chain, the overall business model, where you get your energy from, how many kilowatt hours of electricity you use. It goes into so much detail. And then you get someone who calls you up and checks to make sure that all of that information that you've put in is true and accurate. And if you don't score above a certain point, then you can't become a B Corp yet. But if you've used that tool and if you've assessed your company and you fall just below the line, you will know what you have to do in order to improve. You will know what you have to do in order to make yourself a truly resilient, regenerative, and wonderful business. And what I love about the B Corp community is that we're all at a different stage on that journey to becoming truly sustainable and truly regenerative. And we welcome each other with open arms and are always helping each other to improve. Can you be a B Corp as a launch business? You can start doing the assessment tool as you begin your startup, but until you have some trading, then there's nothing really for them to assess. So you can start the process and you can use the process in order to design your business. And I highly recommend that, because why not design it well in the first place instead of having to fix it once you've designed it wrong? But yeah, I think that's definitely the best thing to do, is to use the assessment tool to design your business in the first place. Here's another great question. What were the biggest challenges for you and Elvis while starting this luxury business? Was it difficult to source and manufacture and design products? Okay. So the biggest challenge for us, we had the fire hose. We didn't have to source other materials. We had the fire hose. But the biggest problem in the beginning was finding someone who would help us to manufacture it. We went to all the luxury manufacturers we could find in the UK, and we were rejected by every single one of them. They all said, "Oh, what's this material? We don't want to use it. We use leather." Then we went to Spain, then we went to Italy, then we went to Portugal. We went everywhere we could find manufacturers who made high-end bags, and they all rejected us. That's when Elvis learned to sew. We bought our first ever sewing machine. It was a Toyota. Elvis learned to sew. And we made some bags. Even still, everyone rejected us. We finally found a manufacturing partner in Romania, and they made bags for Chloe and for Todd's, and we started manufacturing there. But even in, let's say, 2010, 2012, that manufacturer was discovered by a big luxury player, and all of its capacity was purchased, and overnight we had to set up our own manufacturing. So manufacturing up until about 2012 was always a challenge for us. Now at Elvis and Kresse we manufacture all of our own goods from start to finish. So we don't have a long supply chain. We are our supply chain. And the raw materials, just go to a landfill site. We are still, as a nation, landfilling 40 to 60 million tons of waste a year. And a lot of this material is just so epically beautiful. And it just needs someone to see in it what we saw in the fire hose. It just needs someone to fall in love with it and decide to turn it into something wonderful. Do we only get fire hose from London, or do we get it from beyond London? We get it from all kinds of different places. We started with London, and London is still our biggest supplier because a lot of hoses in the southeast go to London's hose and line shop to be repaired or decommissioned. And there's a team there of about 10 people who will keep hoses in service if they can. And if they can't, then those go to us. And all of them have been coming to us since 2005. So we can proudly report that no London hoses have died since 2005. And we also collect from different sources, including actually last year we collected a bunch of hoses from an offshore oil rig. So lots of different places. Oh, I'm liking this. The Spanish shoe that has rubber recycled tire sole and leather band across the foot would be a great product. I agree. I think we probably have to look for the right collaboration partner there. Some other big challenges for us as a business has been, just working out pricing, working out. If you go back to the beginning in 2005, we had no money to start this business. We started it with £49. It was before e-commerce, so Elvis learned to code, and we developed our first website on a platform called Dreamweaver. No, I mean nobody would, or not. Dreamweaver wasn't even a platform; it was a software. There was no Shopify, there was no Squarespace, there wasn't any of these website builders that exist now. So we had to do everything from scratch. And I think that's always what's made us resilient, is that we take our own photos, we build our own website, we build our own workshop, we build our own furniture, we make our own packaging, we make our own products. And I think that's maybe what also makes us quite unique. You have to, it means that we developed all of the skills that we need to run this business in-house. I still do, the business development and the marketing, and certainly, although in 2013 we started to build a team, up until from 2005 to 2013, it was just Elvis and I. And actually, one really funny thing was that we were given in 2012, when there was still just the two of us in the business, we were made or named a brand of tomorrow by the British luxury body, a group called Walpole. And at the first ever event, we were announced as, what Elvis and Kresse do, that's the future of luxury. And I remember us feeling very intimidated by that, because we thought, oh, luxury is really in trouble if the two of us are the only people working on it. But it was, I suppose building the team has been a challenge too. And now it's a challenge to have this wonderful team that are all working from home. Do we have an advice or suggestion for new entrepreneurs in fashion to survive this competitive and saturated field? Yes. If you have to really decide if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. That's a question number one. Do you really need to start your own thing, or do you want to go and support an organization that already lives your values? Because actually, you could argue that we don't need more startups. We need the startups that are there to grow. So you have to decide whether, and also not everybody is an entrepreneur. Lots of people don't want that lifestyle. Actually, we had a young student who came to do a week of work experience with us. And before he came, he always said he wanted to start his own business. After a week with us, he's like, I do not want my own business. It is way too stressful. So you have to decide if that's what you do. Once you've decided, then I think you have to look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We are, despite COVID-19, we have catastrophic climate change that's on the horizon. We have an enormous challenge ahead of us in terms of inequity and poverty and supply chains and, a limiting of material resources. And you have to really, really think, if you can't design a business that is going to sincerely address some of the sustainable development goals, then what's the point? You have to legitimately be tackling big social and environmental problems, or maybe this is the wrong space for you. Because true innovation at this point, we don't have time for just another product unless it's groundbreakingly environmental. And I know that sounds like really tough advice, but these are tough times, and you have to be totally, I have to be totally honest. I mentor lots of different businesses, but I would never spend any time mentoring a business that wasn't truly tackling one of the sustainable development goals, and wasn't on the path to becoming a B Corp, and didn't see social enterprise as one of the most awesome and viable business models. I think you have to be thinking about, what the world that you want to live in, and your business has to deliver that. Where have our team come from? University? ? That's a great question. Most of our team, we've actually found come to us, like Danny, who you met downstairs. He's our chief craftsman. He was working with us in Romania when we were in our first factory, and when we were no longer working with that factory, Danny came with us, which was fantastic. And then Megan, who you also met, she lives down the road from us. And when we first came to the mill, we wanted to hire apprentices, and she was the first person to apply. So we have a lot of young people who come to us as apprentices. These are all local, and most of them have decided they don't want to do traditional post-secondary education. So we give them another opportunity. And then you have, I suppose right now we're hiring for, we're doing a micro forge project. Complicated, long story, might get into it. But we are hiring a postdoc researcher to manage that project, and actually just went through all the CVs for that project yesterday. And we had applicants from China, Morocco, Iran, America, it was France, Portugal. It was truly an outstanding and diverse field. And I can't wait to get going on that project. So yeah, we basically don't care what your background is. It's just that, are you keen to work, and do you, have the right sort of attitude and aptitude? What do we think of new products or Pinatechs? Well, I think there's an enormous future for the bioeconomy. We currently, if you think about all of the synthetic materials that are being used in fashion, that we don't have fantastic ways to recycle yet, that are currently sending out all kinds of microplastic into the sea. I think we should really, really cherish those new and novel materials like Pinatechs that are being introduced to the market, that have true potential to deliver a completely biodegradable bioeconomy that is also circular. There's an enormous amount that's happening in that space. And we need to cherish it, and we need to invest in it, and we need to help scale it. I actually know Carmen, who's the founder of Pinatechs, and we've already talked about how we can use our system on Pinatechs offcuts. So I think there could be some interesting collaborations there too. Let me tell you a bit about the Microforge, because I think it's quite exciting. So we have always wanted to make our own hardware. And that means like the rivets and the D-rings and the belt buckles that go into our products. Elvis, can you chuck me something with lots of hardware? I'm just relying on a supporter for now. And right now we don't make those, and we can't guarantee that they're made of an entirely rescued material. So we want to be able to make them. And here you have, this is a classic example, because you have a belt buckle there, and also you have the rivets that hold that belt buckle on. I can see. And so we decided, how do we create our own hardware but use a rescued material and solve a problem in the process? And in the UK, 16 million aluminum cans are just littered into our public spaces every year. They're just thrown into the environment. This is absolutely appalling. And not only that, so that's the 16 million that just get littered, but 2 billion cans go in the wrong bin, because people don't put it in the recycling bin, they put it in another bin. And those don't get recycled either, 2 billion. So we need people to love aluminum. We need them to absolutely cherish this material. And we looked into whether there would be some sort of 3D printer where you could put aluminum cans in one end and get belt buckles out the other. We did a load of research, talked to all kinds of experts, and what we were told is basically that's 10 years away, and even then, that machine's going to be £300,000. That basically means it's not going to be possible to solve right now the problem that we're facing right now. And it's not going to be cheap enough, because £300,000, I mean, who has that, right? Lots of small businesses don't have that. And then we looked at microforges. And right now, we could just set up a microforge. We could hook it up to propane. We could use fossil fuels. We could melt down these cans and turn them into buckles. But that's not that exciting either. So what about a solar-powered microforge? We started researching that. There aren't any. Then we started talking about some amazing scientists at Queen Mary University about whether or not we could design a microforge. And they said, yep, we probably can. And we got an amazing grant from the BFTT SME scheme to sponsor this amazing postdoc that we're hiring now, so that we can open source design and manufacture a solar-powered microforge. And we're going to be doing that live over the next 18 months. So this is something that we're going to be doing in public. We're going to be sharing all the designs from day one. We're not ever intending to own it. So this is something that, the output of this technology can be shared by anyone, anywhere. We might use it to make belt buckles, but if you can heat aluminum to 660 degrees Celsius, you can also heat water. You can also create a distributed heating system and disrupt fossil fuels going into heating your house, particularly if you live in a rural area. And you can do all kinds of crazy, exciting things. So I think watch this space, because because we're hoping that our love of technology and sharing and openness is going to allow us to participate in a lot of other wonderful solutions. But yeah, that's something that we're working on right now, and I hope we'll be able to have our hardware. Let's say initially we had an 18-month target, but because we're not able to work together in real time now, when we have to work together virtually, there's going to be some complications associated with that. So it might be a longer timeline. And the scary thing for us is that we're going to be doing all of this completely in the open. So you will all know if we succeed, and you will also all know if we failed. But I think that's also quite exciting because it's just a new way to involve people in the work that we're doing and the innovation that we're trying to create. Now, I think we're getting pretty close to time here, but there's still 42 of you online. So if you do have any last questions, please do let me know, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. But if you also want to send through any questions by email, please send them to Kresse@elvisandkresse.com. Or if you want us to blog about something, if you want to just give us a call and talk about anything that we're doing and any of the materials that we currently rescue, please do that as well. But it's been absolutely wonderful to welcome you to our workshop, and I hope that you all stay home and stay safe, and that one day when all of this is over, that you all come and see the workshop really, really live, because it is a truly wonderful and amazing place. So over and out from Tong Mill. Thank you very much. Bye.